Now, across Texas, the issue is...
I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas.
I'm Greg Grugan in Houston.
I'm Rudy Koski in Austin, and this is Texas, the issue is.
Republicans in Congress were unsuccessful in trying to force an impeachment trial for DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. I spoke to Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who, in his opinion, says Democrats in the Senate violated their oath.
The Constitution gives the Senate the sole authority and the responsibility to conduct an impeachment trial, and Senate Democrats, every single one of them, without a word of dissent, voted we will not fulfill our constitutional responsibility.
Republicans were unsuccessful in even having a trial for DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. What is your reaction to what unfolded?
What Chuck Schumer and every Senate Democrat did, they refused to have a trial. They refused to hear any evidence. They refused to let the House managers present their case. And the reason they did so, that was utterly unprecedented. They defied 2 centuries of precedent in the Senate. And the reason they did so is they are desperate to cover up the absolute disaster that is unfolding at our southern border. The Senate Democrats, they did not want a trial before the American people. They did not want evidence before the American people because they cannot defend what Joe Biden and all of the Democrats have done at our southern border.
Which do you have a bigger beef with? Because I know you believe that Mayorkas committed a high crime and misdemeanor. I know you likely, and correct me if I'm wrong, would have voted to remove him from office.
Yes.
Are you more concerned with the fact that there wasn't a trial, or would you have felt this way regardless of how things shook out?
Listen, both. On the substance, what is happening at our southern border is a crisis. It is the single largest crisis facing the state of Texas right now. It's a humanitarian disaster. It's a public safety disaster. It's a national security disaster. Joe Biden and the Democrats are effectively inviting terrorists into this country. We have Iran that has demanded a global jihad on America. We have Hamas and Hezbollah that have demanded global jihads on America. And the Democrats are inviting in any terrorists who want to murder Americans effectively to come across our southern border. And it is an enormous threat to public safety here in the state of Texas. What the Democrats did also is an enormous threat to the Constitution.
There's no secret there's an issue at the border, and more Democrats have been vocal even about the border. But do you genuinely believe that Democrats are saying terrorists and bad people come through? Do you genuinely believe that is an intentional act?
Absolutely. Understand, talk is cheap. Do Democrats, particularly when they're on the campaign trail, do they occasionally say, gosh, we need to do something about the border? Sure, they say that. But then over and over again, when they have a chance to vote on it and do something about it, they vote the other way. And so Democrats repeatedly vote in favor of the open borders. Just a few weeks ago, we forced a vote on the Senate floor. Very simple vote. It says we should deport illegal aliens who violently assault a police officer. Now, Stephen, I got to say, if you talk to any ordinary Texan, that's an easy proposition. If an illegal alien violently assaults a police officer, of course you should deport him and send him home. Every single Senate Democrat voted no. Every one of them.
Guys, what is your word, Rudy? What's your word?
My word, salsa.
All right, I'm going to ask you about that one after the break. Greg, what about you?
Stephen, I'm going with condemnation.
All right, the Fox X Trio will be back right after this break. The Fox Texas Trio is back. Senator Ted Cruz basically blasting Democrats, saying they blocked even a trial, even being able to hear the evidence in the possible impeachment trial for DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Greg, will voters remember in November that Democrats blocked the trial from happening?
Look, Stephen, impeachment was once a profound and deadly serious deliberative process designed as a fail-safe component of our republic's essential checks and balances. But since 2016, it has been cheapened and politically weaponized to achieve partisan objectives. So will voters remember that a Senate trial never took place? My guess is the zealous on opposing sides will, but I think what you're really asking is whether this predictable development moves a sizable number of voters one way or the other. My answer is this. In its totality, illegal immigration and the border crisis, as fomented by Joe Biden, is the most compelling issue in this election and the biggest challenge to the president's reelection. While the lack of a Senate trial is ultimately a footnote, Senator Cruz is correct. Democrats want to talk as little as absolutely possible about the millions of people and tons of deadly drugs that shouldn't be here but are under Joe Biden.
Rudy, is this just inside baseball? Are we looking too into the weeds on this? I doubt people in Austin are ringing in arms about letting go Mayorkas, but overall, are you hearing that people really are focused on canning the DHS secretary?
Well, Stephen, let me start off by saying, God help me, I've got to agree with Greg. I think he's spot on in his assessment. Oh, wow. Now, I don't think most voters really know who the secretary is. And certainly to acknowledge your baseball analogy there, the secretary certainly is not a catcher. Now, what I am hearing here in Central Texas is that President Biden should have been the target of the impeachment hearings. And going after anyone else in the administration was really just a colossal waste of time. It's like all the time that continues to be spent spinning the failed Senate border bill. You know, it was nothing more than serving up a half-baked, ramped-up catch-and-release plan, right? A plan, mind you, that was cooked up by three senators, only three senators, two coming from states not even close to the border, Kansas and Connecticut. You know, it reminds me of that old commercial featuring a group of cowboys who find out that the salsa that they're eating was made in New York City, which is why that was my word, salsa. Now, people noticing that there's a lot of bad cooking going on in New York City and in D.C. There you go, Stephen.
Greg, I don't think either of us will ever have man, I don't know what to describe, but Rudy Koski has it. Greg, do you think the border is still a top issue for voters, or is it starting to be border fatigue, and by the time we get to early voting for the November election, the border may not be the biggest topic?
Stephen, without question, it's national. The hard data is consistent and overwhelming. A recent Pew survey found 78% of Americans believe illegal immigration is either a crisis or a major problem. 73% of Democrats concede what's unfolded is pretty messed up, and the government under Joe Biden bears responsibility. Now, concern over illegal immigration tops the economy, inflation, the national debt, and abortion on the voters' priority list. I think the critical question is, what can Biden and Democrats do in the next 7 months to calm worries that the border crisis will continue and worsen if the president is reelected?
This question is for you both. We'll start with Rudy. Is Senator Cruz going a step too far by saying Democrats are deliberately, woefully, knowingly inviting terrorists into the country? Is that too extreme, or is he accurate?
You know, Stephen, the red flags certainly are there, and Senator Cruz, you know, he's not the only one saying it. The director of the FBI earlier this month issuing a warning about a potential for an organized terror attack in the United States. And you can't ignore the recent murders and attacks that have already been directly linked to undocumented immigrants who the Biden administration released after being caught crossing the border. Greg, what do you think?
Banner day. I agree with Rudy. In Cruz speak, the term inviting can be translated into making it far too easy. That's my read and pretty much the assessment of nearly every security expert I've talked to.
Man, I think this is a show where we've had a lot of firsts. I mean, Rudy agreeing with Greg, Greg agreeing with Rudy. And I will bounce off what you said, Greg. I think in Cruz speak, I don't think he literally is saying Democrats are opening the door and saying terrorists welcome to the United States, but there has been a big issue. A lot of people dropping through the cracks. It's a problem that has to be fixed. Likely won't be fixed under Biden. Probably won't be fixed under Trump. That's all the time we have for this Sunday. To see this episode or any of our past ones, go to our station's YouTube channel.
And keep the conversation going by interacting with us on social media.
And join us next week for another hot topic. Until then, let us know what you think the issue is.